The morning after King Robert's tense small council meeting dawned with a sullen sky over King's Landing, the sun hidden behind a haze that shifted between pale gray and threatening silver. The city streets remained oddly subdued. Merchants and small folk still opened their shops and market stalls, but they did so with an undercurrent of dread in every glance, a hush in every whispered exchange. Word had spread. Tywin Lannister was gathering an army. Eddard Stark was under guard in the Tower of the Hand. The king wrestled with impossible decisions. Some claimed that the entire city teetered on the brink of anarchy if the tension snapped. Others believed war was inevitable, and this hush was no more than the calm before the first thunderclap. Ned Stark stood on the balcony of his chamber, peering through the thinning mists toward the Red Keep's walls. 2 gold cloaks stood on guard outside his door, silent as statues. Although King Robert had not locked him away in a dungeon, Ned's freedom had been sharply curtailed. He was no longer the hand of the king. He felt the emptiness of that dismissal like a phantom ache, a lost limb. More than the title, he missed the autonomy it had granted him. Now, though still a lord, he was a captive of sorts, forced to watch events unfold around him with little power to direct them. He heard a soft noise behind him, the rustle of skirts and careful footsteps. Turning, he saw Sansa standing timidly near the threshold. Her hair brushed until it gleamed, her eyes red from weeping. She held her hands clasped in front of her. "Father?" she said in a voice that wavered with emotion. "May I come in?" Ned's features softened. He gestured for her to approach. "Of course, my sweet girl. You need not ask permission." He glanced about, ensuring Arya was not lurking in the shadows. His youngest daughter had grown quieter these past days, all her anger coiled beneath the surface. Sansa stepped onto the balcony, as though the air outside might scald her. She wore a pale blue gown that clung to her slim shoulders. They say you killed Ser Jaime," she ventured, her voice catching. "The knights in the corridors, the ladies in waiting, everyone in the castle is whispering. Some say you are a murderer and a traitor." She bit her lip. "But you wouldn't do such a thing without cause, would you?" He noted the tremor in her words. She was half pleading for reassurance, half demanding an explanation. How young she still was, how unready for the harshness of the world. Ned reached out, putting a hand on her shoulder. "Sansa, you know me better than that. Jaime Lannister attacked me. I defended myself. It was not an act of murder, nor treason. No matter what the court whispers, the truth is simpler. But the consequences, those are not simple at all." She lowered her head. "They say the queen is furious, that her father will bring an army to the gates. Some even claim that King Robert will order your execution to prevent war." At these words, she glanced up, eyes brimming with tears. "Is that true, father? Will you be executed?" Ned pulled her gently into an embrace, feeling her tense frame relax just slightly. "King Robert would not do that," he said, though his heart clenched with the knowledge that Robert was under immense pressure. "He's my friend, and he knows the truth that Jaime gave me no choice. But war may still come, for Lord Tywin's demands are bitter." She sniffed, a tear sliding down her cheek. "Why does it have to be so cruel? Why can't they just talk?" He smoothed her hair. She spoke with the innocence of youth. "Because some men care more for vengeance and power than for peace. Lord Tywin is not a man known for mercy. But fear not. I will do all I can to keep you safe, and your sister as well." Sansa lifted her chin, seeming to steel herself, though her voice still quavered. "Thank you, father." A moment later, she added, "What of Joffrey?" Her cheeks colored. He does not speak to me now. Since the day they told him of your deed, I've barely glimpsed him, and when I do, he hardly looks my way. He used to be kind." Her voice faded on that lie, and Ned knew she was reciting the illusions of a young girl's romantic fantasies. Illusions that he feared might soon be shattered entirely. "I cannot say, my dear," Ned murmured. "Prince Joffrey's mind is his own, and the queen will be telling him her side of events." Sansa swallowed, as if she wanted to protest but could not find the strength. She withdrew from Ned's embrace, offered a shaky curtsy, and said, "Thank you, father." Before turning to leave, at the threshold she paused. "I still love him," she whispered, so low that Ned nearly missed it. Then, she slipped out, and he was left to wonder if those words were the fragile lament of a maiden's dream or something else altogether. He leaned on the balcony railing, letting the breeze ruffle his gray-brown hair. King's Landing stretched out below, a maze of rooftops and spires. Even with all the city's ugliness, its stink, its crime, its filth, there was a beauty that flickered in the morning light. Yet that beauty could not conceal the deep unrest thrumming through every street and alley. A short time later, a servant brought word that the king had summoned him to the throne room. 2 gold cloaks escorted Ned from the Tower of the Hand, down the stone corridors, passing through lofty halls where sunlight streamed through narrow windows. At every corner, he saw Lannister guards glaring, or knights in Baratheon livery whispering behind gauntlet hands. Sometimes the hush in those corridors felt thicker than the city's muggy air. When they arrived at the massive doors of the throne room, carved oak set with black iron, Ned's escort stopped. A pair of gold cloaks stood aside to allow Ned through, but they made it clear with a curt nod that they would be following close behind. Within the cavernous hall, torches burned low, and columns rose toward a high-vaulted ceiling. There, perched atop the iron throne, sat Robert Baratheon, clad in a black tunic embroidered with a golden crown. Cersei stood beside the dais, wearing deep red. She looked like a coiled viper poised to strike. Gathered along the sides of the hall were members of the court, lesser lords, knights, and ladies, all present to witness whatever matter King Robert wished to address. The tension was palpable. A hush fell over the crowd as Ned approached. He felt the stares. Some pitied him, some loathed him, and others simply waited to see how the drama would unfold. Standing near the front, Ned spotted Peter Baelish, who offered him a fleeting smirk, eyes dancing with unreadable calculation. Farther on, Grand Maester Pycelle watched with a dour expression, as if bracing for an unpleasant lecture. Ser Barristan Selmy stood with the Kingsguard, his white cloak trailing in pristine folds. Next to him, the hound Sandor Clegane loomed tall and grim, watching Ned under heavy-lidded eyes. Robert cleared his throat, and his voice boomed across the hall. "Lord Eddard Stark, approach." Ned advanced to the foot of the dais, ignoring the discomfort in his healing leg. He bowed stiffly. Robert gestured for him to straighten. The king's expression was thunderous, but whether at Ned or at the predicament, it was difficult to say. Cersei spoke first, surprising no one. "My lord husband," she began with an edge to her voice, "I ask again, will justice be done for my brother's murder? The realm looks to you to uphold the law." Murmurs spread among the courtiers. Ned stood silently, feeling the prickle of eyes upon him. Robert raised a hand. "Silence." Then he gazed down at Ned. "Lord Stark, I have decided on a course of action. Many in this city cry out for your blood, for delivering the killing blow to Jaime Lannister, the Queen's brother." His jaw tightened. "But I know you, Ned. I know what truly happened, even if the rumors swirl. You are no murderer. Yet the realm teeters because of that fateful day. Tywin Lannister has marched to Harrenhal, awaiting my reply. He demands your life." A hush filled the hall so profound that the crackle of torches seemed suddenly deafening. Ned swallowed, maintaining his composure. "Your Grace, I stand ready to face whatever justice you deem necessary." The words tasted bitter, but he could not dishonor himself by begging for mercy like a common criminal. Robert grimaced as though swallowing something vile. "I will not hand you over to Tywin. He is a lord, not the king. If he wants vengeance, he can damn well come and talk to me. But to prevent a war, I must show that I do not take his grievance lightly." His gaze flicked to the crowd, then returned to Ned. "By royal decree, I sentence you to remain in the Red Keep under guard and relinquish all titles and offices until this matter with Lord Tywin can be resolved through negotiation. You will not be permitted to leave the confines of the city without my express command. If Lord Tywin agrees to parley, we will consider what restitution might suffice." Angry buzzing broke out among some onlookers, Lannister retainers, especially. Cersei's eyes flared with rage. "House Lannister will not be appeased by mere house arrest, your grace," she said icily. "My father. Your father will do as I command," Robert roared, rising halfway from the Iron Throne. "I am king, or have you forgotten?" His voice carried such force that even Cersei fell silent, though her face was tight with fury. Robert's heavy breathing was audible in the hush. At last he sank back with a grunt. "This is my verdict," he said. "Lord Stark is to remain in the Red Keep, no longer as Hand. Ser Barristan, see that the gold cloaks ensure his quarters are well guarded. Grand Maester Pycelle, draw up the official decree. Now get out, all of you. I've had enough." Cersei's glare swept the hall like a blade. Most courtiers averted their eyes. She turned and stalked away, red skirts swirling. Robert descended from the Iron Throne, stepping heavily onto the dais, and disappeared through a side door, accompanied by a pair of Kingsguard. The hall erupted in hushed, frantic chatter. Ned stood rooted in place for a moment, relief and dread warring in his chest. He was spared the headsman's axe, for now, but the sword of Damocles still hovered overhead. Tywin Lannister's rage would not be assuaged by these half-measures. The realm might still bleed. Already, Ned imagined columns of Lannister soldiers, golden lions upon crimson banners, marching eastward from Harrenhal. He turned to leave, escorted by the same gold cloaks who had accompanied him in. Ser Barristan offered him a curt nod of respect as he passed, though his face remained stoic. The faintest flicker of sympathy lit the old knight's eyes. Men parted before Ned, some offering wary glances, others stepping back as though he carried plague. In that moment, he understood all too well how fragile his position was. Outside in the corridor, Baelish caught up to him with quick, light steps. My, how the tides turn," Littlefinger said, adjusting his fine doublet. "One day the hand of the king, the next a caged wolf. How swiftly fortunes change in this city." Ned frowned. "Lord Baelish, do you find amusement in my predicament?" Baelish shrugged. "I find amusement in everything that reveals how power truly shifts hands. No matter who sits on the Iron Throne, the realm is but a shadow play of alliances, gold, and secrets. You, my lord, have placed yourself in the lion's jaws. The question is whether King Robert can pry those jaws open before they snap shut." He offered Ned a tight, vague smile. "For what it's worth, I am not eager to see you devoured. It would be costly for us all. Perhaps we can still find a path that spares the Seven Kingdoms from war." Ned considered him, unsure whether to trust the man. "A path that benefits you, no doubt." Littlefinger chuckled. "Certainly, but my benefit need not exclude yours. Try not to be so solemn, my lord. Should you need me, I'll be in my usual haunts." He waggled his eyebrows ironically and strolled away, disappearing into the swirl of courtiers leaving the throne room. Moments later, Varys glided into view, silent as a shadow. "My condolences, Lord Stark," he said, pressing his hands together. "But perhaps the king's verdict is better than some alternatives. Losing your head, for instance." His tone was infuriatingly mild. "And though the queen rages, you are still breathing. We mustn't forget the little blessings." Ned narrowed his eyes. "Do you consider yourself a friend, Lord Varys?" The spymaster lifted his eyebrows in mock surprise. "I consider myself a friend of the realm, and you, dear lord, might yet be of great value to the realm's peace, if peace can be salvaged. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must attend to the king's command and see that ravens fly to Harrenhal. Lord Tywin must know his demands have been partially addressed." With a sycophantic bow, Varys disappeared into the throng, leaving Ned with uneasy thoughts. It seemed everyone in King's Landing knew more than they let on, playing their own secret game. As the gold cloaks ushered him back to the Tower of the Hand, his new cage as Baelish called it, Ned felt a crushing weight settle in his chest. He longed for the frigid clarity of the north, for the honest tang of snow in the air, for the loyal faces of his bannermen. Here, deception wafted through every corridor like perfume. When he reached his chambers, Sansa and Arya were waiting, both looking anxious. Arya jumped up from a chair, fists clenched. "Well?" she demanded. "What happened? Did the king set you free?" Ned shook his head. "He's bound me more tightly. I must remain here under guard until the matter with the Lannisters is resolved, one way or another." Arya's face reddened with anger. "That's not fair. You only fought that golden-haired dog because he attacked you." She stomped a foot. "Why doesn't the king see that?" Sansa exhaled shakily. "He does, Arya. But Mother always said justice can be complicated in King's Landing." "Father, does this mean we cannot return to Winterfell? We've had no word from Robb, nor from Bran. Are we trapped here?" Ned's throat tightened at the mention of his younger sons. "For the moment," he said softly, "we must be patient. The king and Lord Tywin may yet talk." He didn't believe that wholly, but what else could he say to his frightened daughters? Arya flung herself into a chair, arms folded. "I hate waiting. I want to go home." Ned crossed to her, resting a hand on her shoulder. He recalled his father's words in long-ago days, that war was not about glory but about sorrow and blood. "I know," he murmured to Arya. "I do too." Sansa looked on, hugging herself. Her eyes flicked between Ned and Arya, as if she wanted to join in but felt unsure. The tension between the sisters had only grown since the day Joffrey had been humiliated near the Trident. But here, in this uncomfortable captivity, there was little space for old grudges. They needed each other now more than ever. Time passed slowly in the Red Keep. Each sunrise brought fresh rumors, like waves breaking upon a shore. Ned learned through snatches of conversation that Tywin's army was swelling around Harrenhal, a fortress of blackened towers and cursed legend. Lords from the Westerlands had answered the call. Word also arrived that the Riverlands were stirring in alarm, Lord Hoster Tully uncertain how to respond to Tywin's show of force. Rumor had it that Gregor Clegane burned villages along the borders, sowing terror in the name of avenging Jaime Lannister. Robb Stark, so the Ravens said, was summoning banners in the north. The Great John, the Manderleys, and other lords loyal to House Stark began to gather at Winterfell, anticipating a march south should the worst come to pass. Ned's heart ached. He had never intended for war to consume the realm, let alone drag his own children into its maw. He had acted in self-defense, but was that distinction enough to spare them all? Catelyn was still at the Eyrie, or so Ned assumed. No messages had arrived from her, though the Vale remained tense after Tyrion's disappearance from Lisa Arryn's clutches. Perhaps Catelyn sought to smooth relations with her sister, or sought safe passage home. In any case, she was far away, out of the immediate storm about to crash upon King's Landing. Yet for all this looming threat, the city did not collapse. For a time, daily life in the capital proceeded. Merchants sold their wares, ships arrived at the harbor, and taverns bustled with men seeking a stiff drink. Gold cloaks doubled their patrols, occasionally clashing with drunken thugs or pickpockets, but no large-scale riots erupted. Many of the city's small folk seemed content to wait, watch, and hope that the king would find a way out of the crisis. Ned spent his days in the Tower of the Hand, reading, pacing, corresponding with Maester Luwin in the north, or receiving the occasional visitor. Sansa and Arya were never far, though Sansa sometimes slipped away to wander the gardens, escorted by guards, and Arya disappeared into the keep's depths, returning flushed with secrecy. Once, Ned found her bruised and sweaty. She confessed that she had stolen away to continue practicing sword work with Syrio Farrell, though how she managed it with the increased guard presence remained a mystery. Ned scolded her gently, but could not entirely quell his pride that she refused to abandon her training. On a hot afternoon, as Ned stood gazing from a balcony overlooking Blackwater Bay, he heard a commotion from the corridor. The gold cloak stationed at his door challenged someone. Then, to his surprise, The door burst open, and Tyrion Lannister strode inside with surprising boldness for a man whose brother Ned had slain. Tyrion was dressed in a fine jerkin of dark crimson, embroidered with golden lions at the collar. His mismatched eyes, one green, one black, gleamed with curiosity and something like amusement. The gold cloaks started to move after him, but Tyrion held up a hand with a regal flourish. "Stand aside, good sirs. I've no intention of harming Lord Stark. And if I did, what chance would I have?" He gave a snorting laugh, as though the idea was preposterous. Ned turned fully, surprised but wary. "Lord Tyrion," he said carefully, "I hadn't expected you to appear here of all places." Tyrion smirked. "I hadn't expected it myself, truth be told, given that you killed my darling brother, or so the rumor goes. But since I'm very much alive, and a free man, thanks to a bit of resourcefulness, I decided to return to King's Landing." His gaze flickered around the room, taking in the state of Ned's forced lodging. "I see you're faring about as well as I might have guessed." Ned's mouth tightened. "I'm under house arrest, as you doubtless know. Why are you here?" Tyrion shrugged. "Curiosity, mostly. My dear father is assembling quite the host, demanding satisfaction for Jaime's death. But I think you and I both know that such satisfaction may not come cheaply. And as it happens, I rather like living in a kingdom that isn't completely consumed by civil war. War is bad for dwarfs, you know. Short legs have trouble fleeing armies." Ned regarded the imp. He was Tywin Lannister's only surviving son, a man whose cunning was said to be sharper than any blade. "What is your purpose in seeking me out?" Tyrion wandered closer, hands clasped behind his back. "A question for a question, Lord Stark. Did you truly kill Jaime in self-defense?"